This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, I'm excited to welcome back to the show senior writer from The Athletic, the all-in kid himself, Jake Ciely.
Hey, man, this is what, too long? It's been a year plus since we've talked?
It's probably been a couple of years, but, time flies, right?
I know. Well, you just said a couple of years. That actually makes me feel even worse about it.
It's okay. It's all right. I'm excited to have you on here. I'm excited to have you join me once again. And today we're going to talk about, the NFL. Talk about actually some football instead of your journey, your origin story, which is always fun. So if you want to check that out, those episodes are definitely evergreen. Learn more about Jake Ciely on another podcast. But on this one, we're talking NFL. We're talking post week 2, already heading into week 3, which is weird. We're also going to talk a little bit about your experience with the Stacked League. And so for those unfamiliar with the Stacked League, it's one of the most competitive and innovative fantasy leagues on the planet, bringing together some of the biggest names in the industry to compete for a championship, obviously, but also raise $10,000 for charity. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And got a couple of charity leagues I'm in, but this one was the intriguing one going against some of these big wigs in the league.
Yeah, a massive amount of talent in this league. So if you want to follow along, for sure. Follow along, visit stackedfantasy.com/stacked league. And you can follow this league. And again, I think it's fun to share the stories behind the scenes. Exciting stuff for me as an outsider, but kind of sharing the story of this. And I know that, a lot of people say, oh, I don't care about other people's leagues. This is kind of cool. It's kind of fun to see like what's happening on the inside. And I think stories like this that you'll find in this interview, it's fun to get the kind of the behind the scenes as to kind of how these deals or how these moves are being made, why they're being made. And I think from an education process, you got some of the best doing some interesting things in this league. So it's cool to learn in this format.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the bigger part about it too, is like we got the waivers running super early. So we did that in Flex this year to kind of get an idea for everybody out there before hopefully everybody else's waivers run, that you kind of like see what we're thinking, because that's the biggest thing, especially when you have Fab, is nobody ever, your home league, but you kind of get like a kind of tell, like you can say, like I answered a couple questions in The Athletic yesterday. It was like, hey, just so you know, industry leagues, blank Browning went for this, and this. So that kind of gives you a better range than what I would just like speculate with.
Yeah, super helpful for sure. But first things first, you're no stranger to highly competitive industry leagues. You run flex leagues yourself. How's everything going with flex leagues? And how was that draft experience? I always love hearing the stories, the experience in New York and all that. How was that experience this year for you?
Yeah, well, one of those years you're going to have to make it out there for a change. Like,
for
get
sure.
your butt out for the fun in New York. But the fun in New York is really like the whole reason behind flex leagues was a little bit different from Stack. Different, like, yeah, it's fun to brag in that one and be like, hey, I won, and we have belts, and shout out to Trophy Smack for that, and the belts and the chains and all that type of stuff. But it's really about hanging out with people that, how many times have you and I done this? And I would say even long, like 6-7 years since I've actually seen you in person. Like, that's the kind of thing. It's like getting to hang out with everybody. Just this past year at Flex in New York, there was 4 people that I've never met before in person. And actually 2 of them I never even met online, quote, by other people's connections until this past year in 2024. So that's the real appeal, is just getting to meet all these people in the industry, hang out, do a draft together, but also hang out afterwards. We went to SummerSlam, watched Dave and Buster's. And the best part, you say how the drafts went. The drafts went fun because I didn't have anything to do for the first time. And since like pre-COVID, everybody showed up. So like I had been I've been stacking the league to be like, I kept leaving one spot for myself, and then somebody's flight would get canceled and all that stuff. So I have to draft twice or find somebody else to fill in. And like, you know what? I'm going to stack and fill both leagues and then step in when one person inevitably doesn't, has something come up. Everybody showed up. And then everybody on the online leagues showed up and was ready to go. So I am in the best bowl this year. I got to do that one. I got kicked all the way over that league. I'm in 5th or 6th place over there.
That's awesome. No, that's fine. It's true. Yeah, something like that is taking advantage of getting together with people in the space, like-minded people. It's always special. So I'm always envious and definitely want to get out there sometime for sure. So obviously we're coming off of week 2 in the NFL. What what are your biggest surprises and takeaways these first 2 weeks into the season?
So I'll start with the good. I think the biggest surprises is, oh my gosh, is Daniel Jones actually good? Everybody's like, hey, Shane Steichen fixed it. A little bit of credit to Kevin O'Connell. Maybe like when he was there last year, he got the ball rolling and fixing him. I don't think anybody saw this coming. Obviously, we're still hesitant because we know Daniel Jones, but I think some of the surprises would be him. I think some of the breakouts, there's a few that are surprised. I want to save some players that we're excited about for that one. But I think the bigger surprise from the negative standpoint would be how bad the rookie running backs have been. And like down the list. So my rankings article over The Athletic today that just came out. I did the big four, the top four in ADP, obviously Genty, Hampton, Harvey, and Henderson. And I kind of gave them worry levels. And, it's relative to like where we expected. Like we didn't expect all four of them to be RB1s, but we expected all four to be at least RB2s. And we're talking about Genty's not even in there. Like Hampton's not, like none of them are. And for a class that was the best in blank, like the best ever possibly. And I don't think many people would still come back and be like, hey, it's not the best. It's still one of the best running back draft classes we've ever seen. But so many split backfields still split. So many of these rookies not even getting touches like Harvey and down the line. I think that's the biggest surprise is nobody expected it to be this bad for the fact that it was, and I know that rookie excitement catches fantasy people every year. We always want the shiny new toy. Yeah. And, that happens especially at wide receiver because there's only a handful, 2, 3, 4, maybe that have top 20 value. But I don't think anybody expected the running backs to be like this. And I jokingly even said this on Twitter the other day. Are we going to turn around in 2 months and be like, Judkins is the only top 15 rookie running back because Genty's having a rough go of it. I do think Genty's going to be fine, and it was kind of tongue in cheek, but I think that's got to be the biggest surprise we've seen at least through the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, the usage is all that is fascinating. It's got me nervous as a fantasy manager of multiple of these players. So hopefully it turns around. Hopefully it's something we laugh about later down the road in the season.
Buy low.
What moving forward? What players are you most excited about? And then which are some of the ones you're most nervous about?
So there's a little Barkley right there. So always excited for Barkley.
Always.
I'll say most excited. So this is one, Quentin Johnston, just because I'm excited that it's finally happening for him. And, I don't want to do this as like a victory lap because I wasn't that high on him. So let me make that clear. Where I'm coming from on this, when I say is that there's players that we see coming out of college and we say, this is who they are. Quentin Johnston was raw. People thought he needed development, including myself. I think the consensus what he needed development. And of course the drops have been magnified, but this is somebody that wasn't really expected to do much in year one, maybe year two, and it's finally happening in year three. We shouldn't be completely shocked by this. I know that it was looking like a long shot given what happened the first 2 years, but I only bring that up for other wide receiver situations. Sometimes it might only take 1 year. Oh, by the way, Rome Odunze. That's hella fun to watch. I'm super excited about that. I was one of the people that was like, hey, I actually think Odunze could have more fantasy value than DJ Moore. And remember how bad his rookie season was. So I want to caution people that, I write an article every year about last year's trash. And it's basically the people that want to write off players because they burn them. And a lot of times, a lot of those players are first or second, third year players because the first or second year was so bad. So I think that's one that I'm really excited about. I am also excited about Scadaboo, that he's finally getting touches already. I say finally, but he's already getting him in week 2 after missing essentially the entire preseason. Nervous, but the rookie running backs, but also I think we start getting a little bit nervous, and this is going to tie into my fantasy team, about Justin Jefferson, who used to be QB immune. Like there was no stopping him. Nick Mullins and McCarthy obviously had a terrible first 2 weeks, outside of one quarter. And now we're turning to Carson Wentz, who, by the way, hasn't thrown for 180 yards in about 3 years. And granted, I know some of those are spot start. Well, they're all spot starts. And that one game I'm referencing from 2 years ago was 300 yards, but it's still Carson Wentz at this point. And Jordan Addison's coming back next week. It's just a little bit concerning, and it feels bad when you have a first-round pick, and then, of course, to loop in with Justin Jefferson, I think there is concern for Brian Thomas and, of course, Drake London. Although I will say, buy low on both, especially Brian Thomas. I'm really. I saw your reaction. Do you have a take on that too?
No, it's true. Buy low. It makes a lot of sense right now because if there's a lot of managers out there that are panicking, it's just normal for week 1, week 2 for people to kind of lose it when it comes to what they think they're going to get out of a player. So buying low, making sure you are trying to acquire some players.
I want to make that clear. No. I wasn't laughing when you said lose it in my head. The Eminem, like as soon as they lose, that's where my mind went. No, real quick on the Brian Thomas. Like I went back and watched. I've already watched again, but I'm like, let me watch again. And I'm going to watch every single incompletion from the first 2 weeks. You know how many were Brian Thomas's fault? 3. He dropped 2, and of course, magnified the similar to Quentin Johnston, magnified by the one that would have been a touchdown, another one that could have possibly been a first down, and then another one that just was like drop-ish. The others were tight coverage, basically thrown into the defender for half of them, and then Trevor Lawrence overthrew him most of the other throws, or underthrew, but mostly overthrows. So 3 out of his 15, like go buy low on Brian Thomas.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea. Again, there's people out there panicking, wanting to sell off assets. They're 0-2. It's a great time to take advantage of some managers that are a little nervous about what's going on. But let's get into Stack League because obviously there's a lot of overlap with some of these players. And first, what made you want to compete? I know you mentioned the charity and the competition, but what was it that really made you want to compete in this league?
So I'm free to say the fact that the former founder of The Athletic was the person who actually said, hey, I have a connection in a league that I think you should join. And so shout out to Adam on that one. But also when he said, hey, I have this person with Jeremy, I was like, all right, I know who you're talking about. So that made it interesting, the fact that he was excited for it. And then, of course, Jeremy and being able to play in another league where, fighting against some of these people aren't even in flex, just by the timing of things and stuff like that. So anytime you see like Andy Behrens, though, by the way, I'm having him on my pod this week, one of the greats. Nice. Love playing with Andy. Yes. But just to see the names and mostly to engage the audience, which is like part of it. Like, so flex, we try to, even though some of the rules are a little bit different, we still try to be like, hey, this is how we're actually drafting. You can take this and use it and say, okay, maybe I need to go higher or lower in my draft. And again, the waivers in the season, the fabs, seeing me like, okay, this is what we're doing. Hopefully this helps, because we write these articles and you actually get to see it in action. So that was the real appeal here, but plus the interaction on Reddit too, because that's the one thing, like, so we can show you all these things with flex, but we don't have like that Reddit where we can go back and forth. Like somebody asked, they said, I'm surprised that I didn't go bigger in waivers. I don't know. Am I jumping ahead? Did you want to ask the question
okay.
about
Yeah, that's okay.
Like, somebody was like, why didn't you go heavier on Daniel Jones in waivers? And they hit me up. They're like, hey, if you can jump over to Reddit, answer the question, because I think it's a good one. And I agreed. And so it was twofold. Like, I lost Joe Burrow, which is painful, and like super painful. I wish I could go back in time, because I thought it was like, hey, you know what? At this point of the draft, running backs and wide receivers, seemingly replaceable for what's still going to be there in the next round. Joe Burrow slid because it's an industry league. Nobody wants to take quarterbacks except for the elites. And I'm like, hey, you know what? It's Joe Burrow. I'll do it. That hurt. That's hurting right now. But anyway, They're like, why don't you go heavier for Daniel Jones? And it was because, one, I do believe in Jake Browning to a degree, a top 10 quarterback in his time replacing Joe Burrow. And actually the only 2 games he wasn't top 10 were both against Pittsburgh that year, 2 years ago. So that's pretty telling. But the other part of it is we don't have, or Sleeper, which not coming for Sleeper, it's very rare. Most sites don't have this. You don't have the contingency bid where you can put it on the same player. So if I could have contingency bid Daniel Jones, and if I don't get Daniel Jones, get Jake Browning, and left that there alone, I would have went a lot higher on Jones and pulled back on Troy Franklin. I would have probably put Troy Franklin in the teens. So I overshot on Franklin to make sure he was my biggest bid, so that my next 2 bids were quarterbacks. And that was the problem, because I didn't want to end up with Daniel Jones and Jake Browning and then miss on Troy Franklin or another running back because of that. So the long story short is that I got to interact and explain all that with somebody on Reddit about why that happened.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to be able to help the crowd, help the viewers, help the listeners, help the followers understand the mind of Jake Ciely, or every person in this league kind of. But it's cool. No, I think there's a lot of cool aspects of this league. Again, the charity component's huge. 5,000 going to Fantasy Cares, 5,000 going to the charity of choice of the winner. So in your case, what is the charity you're battling for?
Yeah, CHKD is the Children's Hospital of King's Daughters. It's something that we have a couple local ones here in Virginia, and something that my niece has spent a lot of time there when she was born. My wife's daughter has spent time there. So it's basically helping kids. It's one of the charities that that 100% of your donations going straight to them to help these hospitals and a lot of kids. And it actually started even before my niece was born. David Wright, who's from this area, who I've met a couple times, he now lives in California, so he doesn't show up here very much anymore, but I used to do a poker charity night, and it was for CHKD. So just a really good place that, like, if you're interested in helping kids with, any type of birth defects or issues or health problems, basically throughout their entire, until they're adults. Just a great foundation.
That's fantastic. Now, with this season, again, a little bit of roller coaster start. First week, you're heading into Monday night against Kendall Valenzuela. Should have pulled it out. I mean, the projections were right there, equal. You would have thought that Jefferson and Swift were going to come through for you. You fell short. You got the win in week 2, but obviously a little painful. You got Joe Burrow out. You got Austin Eckler. I mean, he was the last pick in your draft. The same time, it hurts. It hurts, like, probably personally and professionally, right? Like, you want Austin to do well. He's such a great advocate for fantasy. Talk about that, like, just dealing with the highs and lows of the season so far for you, and then dealing with those injuries.
Yeah, it's Austin Eckler. I thought was a super value. I hadn't even used him yet, and I'm like, you know what? The buys are going to be coming. Swift is so as my third running back, but I have Austin Eckler, great backup plan. He'll be my RB3, and then that happened. And on top of it, not only the Joe Burrow injury, but he already laid an egg in week 1. Yeah. It comes out, gets me a massive 7 points in week 2. And you and I were kind of talking off screen beforehand. This is actually why I love doubleheaders against the median. And this is coming from somebody that shouldn't have won week 2. I won 99 to, 80 or something like that. Like, Andrew basically had what I had in week 1, was just like everybody crap the bed. Everybody. Yeah. Like, it just, and there were some decent performances. I had Jonathan Taylor, and there was a couple of, they actually came back with Jonathan Taylor after Justin Jefferson, but, like, still some very underwhelming performances. And if I was going against the median, I would have went 1-1, which is kind of the reason I like that, because especially in an industry like this is, I got lucky with my matchup. I should be 0-2, let's be honest. And it's just, it comes down to Burrow being hurt, Kyron in week 2 underperforming, Justin Jefferson underperforming, DK Metcalf. Oh, you want to talk about worries? I should have brought up DK Metcalf. I included him in the article this week. ADOT of under 6. By the way, the highest wide receiver last year to have an ADOT under 6 was Khalil Shakir, who was still wide receiver 48 in fantasy points per game. This is bad news. Like, wide receivers with under 6 ADOT do not produce unless they're touchdown scorers. The only one from last year that actually mattered was Chris Godwin, but Chris Godwin was also catching touchdowns and 1 billion balls a game before he got hurt. So I don't think that's going to happen for DK Metcalf. He would be a major concern as well. So, like, it just hurt. Like, I'm not excited for a week 3 matchup, to be honest.
Well, yeah, you're 1-1. It's one of those, you're coming off a win, but yeah, there's some obstacles ahead for you. Obviously, Dave Richards sitting there at 2-0 at top of the league. Thanks to you, Andrew Cooper's at the cellar. We got a last place punishment in this league. So Andrew Cooper is currently 0-2. Rough start. But let's talk about the beginning, just your roster, its draft day construction. From the 6th spot, you went with Jefferson, you went with Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams. Then Joe Burrow, DK Metcalf, DeAndre Swift. Was that a normal kind of build for you? Is that a strategy that you normally would find in that spot, or is anything different for you?
No, this is what happens when you try to diversify and you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to try and do one league differently. Why did it have to be the stack league that I did one thing differently? Like, Justin Jefferson, this is the only place I have him. This is the only time from this. I got the 6 spot. I joked with Jeremy about this. Is they sent out the pre-draft questions and it was like, where do you want to draft? And I was like, I want 1 or 2 or the turn. I hate the middle. And I said, I even put in my answer, I especially hate 6, 7, 8. And then I get 6. And I even sent them an email. I was like, did you do this on purpose? Like, you just want to like kind of, and of course not. But I had 6 and 7 in so many leagues. And the majority of the time, the vast majority of the time, it was Christian McCaffrey. It was another running back in that range, depending on who fell. Or it wasn't Jefferson. It just happened to be the fact that, like, maybe CeeDee Lamb made it there. Or on the off chance, I did end up going with Amon-Ra St. Brown in a couple spots, which would have been a lot of fun last week. But this was the one time I'm like, yeah, you know what? Jefferson's there. Let's try it. I did love getting Jonathan Taylor in the 2nd round and Kyron in the 3rd. I thought those were great values. And I understand people are a little bit concerned about Kyron right now. I'm not overly concerned. It just might be more of a fringe running back one than, that mid RB one that we've been getting. It's what happened after that on top of it. So it was already Jefferson. It's the fact that Metcalf is he's a major concern. And I wouldn't have had Metcalf if I went with my normal route because I would have had the running back in round 1. I would have been drafting a wide receiver earlier than Kyron wouldn't be on my team, put it that way.
Yeah.
So just those kind of situations, and then of course Burrow went out the window. And then the tight end run really got me. Like I was really surprised the aggressiveness for the tight ends, and then Njoku late. I'm like, yeah, you know what? This will be cool. I'll get Njoku. It's fine or whatever. Thanks a lot, Harold Fannin, and a split tight end situation. And now, like, I'm surprised how many people have 2 tight ends. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to keep riding David Njoku for a while, and hopefully that pans out. So it just came down to, like, I should have just stuck with my guns, but I wanted to try one league a little bit differently, and it shouldn't have been a stack league.
Well, you got to swing for the fences in leagues like this, right? Everyone's gonna remember that first place winner and all that charity that goes in their name. So it makes sense.
That was my thinking with Burrow.
Yeah, well,
like when he was still there, I'm like, hey, you know what? I don't have to play the game. Like, and that was my other part too. Is like looking at how these rosters were constructed. It was like, hey, if I go with my normal route, I was joking. I was saying it's Ricky Bobby, first or last with wide or quarterbacks. So if I don't get one of the elite 4, I'm going to wait till the end game. And I was like, you know what? In a league like this, there's not going to be as many like lottery tickets that I really like late, and especially on waivers. So I don't want to absorb 2 spots at quarterback if Burrow is still here. And that's kind of where my thought process was at the time. Also, when we drafted, if we could turn back time, if we could go back, I would have taken Chris Godwin where I did. Because at the time we were drafting, it was, Chris Godwin might not be 100% for week 1, but he should probably be out there maybe a week or 2 before. And as we spent more weeks, and actually by the time we even hit the end of the draft, it was already like, Chris Godwin, October. And I'm like, well, thanks a lot.
Yeah. Well, I get you. I mean, I drafted Joe Burrow, kind of similar spot in my home league, hoping that just the guy is going to play for a team without a defense. He's got all the weapons. He's going to throw a lot this year, but it happened. And we got to pivot. Again. We talked about the Eckler injury, the Burrow injury. It's forced you to dive onto that waiver wire you mentioned a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Top waiver wire bid, Troy Franklin. You went after him. Why do you like Troy Franklin right now?
Because I'm going for home run play here, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, do I think this could blow up in our face? Sure. I mean, do I think this could be, hey, it was a 2-week flash and we're going to get to week 8 and we're like, hey, remember when everybody went nuts on Troy Franklin? But the one appeal, I will say this, he did run the most routes for the Broncos. As you can tell, I'm like sleep deprived over here. Legitimately, I'm in Virginia where it rained all day yesterday and couldn't get the dogs to go to the bathroom, and then they finally did, and because I kept raining, and then they had to clean up their paws, and then they were like panicking in the middle of the night because they didn't get to poop twice. Anyway, zero sleep. Anyway, it's been a hell of a 24 hours over here. But so to go back to Troy Franklin, he ran the most routes. And no, I don't think he is the number 1. Cortland Sutton actually definitively is still the 1, and we're not going to turn to Troy Franklin. But the big appeal here is that we finished the preseason saying, oh, look, Marvin Mims is running as the 2. And that's somebody that I was never a huge fan of, but I was like, hey, you know what? If Marvin Mims is running as the 2, I'll take flyers on that. Interesting enough, week 1, he's splitting with Troy Franklin. If Franklin was just barely in front of him, it's like, ooh, maybe Mims isn't the 2. Or, hey, this could be Sean Payton doing Sean Payton things. Well, week 2 rolled around, and that's why I bring up the most routes is because it was double what Mims was doing, and 1 touchdown on his 2 opportunities, and hey, he got it. But if Franklin is going to be the 2, and he is going to consistently be out there, and his big playability, and he plays with Bo Nix, and Nix, I think there's a good, if you're looking for a quarterback, I'd buy low on Bo Nix. Just the appeal of being in Sean Payton's system, I think that he does have top 30 upside. Would I guarantee that? Obviously not. Could it, we get, like I said, we could get 4 weeks from now and we're dropping him. But I need help. DeAndre Swift, I feel like, is a ticking clock. That, like, I'm just waiting for that one to break. And then the DK Metcalf blew up my face. Justin Jefferson's been underperforming. Again, I lost quarterback, which is why I went, decently heavy on Browning. So that's really was. It was shoot for the moon kind of situation with Troy Franklin and just shooting for that upside, which, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but he played with Bo Nix, and like they had lunch together, and I think they bunked together, and wore the same costumes at Halloween, and like, so there's a lot of connection there.
I love it. You got to follow those connections. Next up, Daniel Jones went. You mentioned that earlier. Is kind of the highest priced quarterback. You got Browning to kind of handle the Burrow situation. You talked about that. You did go after Blake Corum. Is that a handcuff situation for Kyren, or independently, are you in other leagues looking at Corum as someone who could potentially find a role?
So I don't think he'll potentially find a role. I do think, and it didn't have so much to do with a handcuff for Corum, because I'm actually team, or like the proponent of, I'd rather have somebody else's handcuff, because. And this is obviously the riskier play, but the point being is, like, so let's say I don't have Kyren Williams and I picked up Corum. So whoever my RB, let's say I had Josh Jacobs instead of Kyren Williams. So Josh Jacobs and Corum, at some point I might have 2 options, because if Kyren gets hurt, now I also have Blake Corum. And if you have the handcuff, you're always net 1. Like, if you lose Jacobs and you have his backup, whoever it might be right now, Chris Brooks right now, but let's go back to Kyren. If I lose Kyren and I get Corum, I still only have 1 running back. It's not like I got that out. And I understand the riskier play is if I have Josh Jacobs, if I have Josh Jacobs and picked up Corum, and then the person who has Kyren doesn't, they lose out completely. That's the risk. But, again, I'm shooting for the potential here. I'm always going to shoot for upside. It's first or last. Nobody cares if you finish 3rd or 4th in the league. Like, that's cool. It's like, hey, I didn't finish worst place, or I made it to the playoffs. Nobody cares. Nobody remembers you. So I want to go for first, and that's why I'm looking for as many opportunities as can be. And the reason for Corum that I went after him in a lot of leagues, including this one, is because we weren't sure if it was going to be Jarquez Hunter or Blake Corum after they drafted Hunter in the preseason use. It's clearly Corum, and as we know, and I've said this before, Sean McVay makes good running backs great, and he makes great running backs elite. Do I think that anybody in this backfield is potentially elite? No. But if something were to happen to Kyren, Corum is going to be like right now. You and I are talking, and in practice today, Kyren blows his ACL. Everybody is ranking Blake Corum as a back end RB1 this week.
Yeah, for sure. I think that that's definitely true. So that value, I agree. Hunter, Corum, it's nice to see some decision on that front, because I think a lot of people want to have Corum on their team, or want to have one of them just in case something happens to Kyren. So I mean, obviously he's young, but still they use him a lot, so he could go down. Now you also one move you're trying to make is potentially moving Jonathan Taylor. Again, you're in a situation where you're trying to handle some of the losses you've had. Why are you shopping Jonathan Taylor? What are you trying to get out of him?
Because he's my best piece right now. And that's really what it comes down to, is like, I lost Joe Burrow. I don't have Eckler for my running back depth. That's the one part where I came out of the draft thin to begin with, was running backs, because I kind of stacked wide receivers. Also, the Chris Godwin situation kind of messed things up. Again, the time we were drafting 2 or 3 weeks later would have been completely different. But I think... And I'm not saying to be like, look at me, to anybody listening. I'm just saying this as my suggestion. Actually, again, to reference back to my article at The Athletic this week, I did my trade advice at the top. Like, what are, the things that you need to do when you're doing trades? Look at people's needs. Understand that just because you want something doesn't necessarily they want to give it up or want what you're offering. Because, like me right now, Jonathan Taylor, if I give him up, I can't not get a running back, because I have Jonathan Taylor, Kyren Williams, Swift, and then Flyers. And Swift, again, could be done in no time. So if you're like, hey, Jonathan Taylor for Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm like, that's perfect value, but I don't know if I can do it because now I'm dead almost at running back if I lose, especially if I lose Kyron. So all those points being is when you are in a position like I am, where week 1 was miserable, week 2 was even worse, even though I got the win because I also lost Burrow, is I need to fill some depth. And everybody always wants the best player in the deal, deservedly so. But sometimes you have to be the one to say, hey, you know what? Here's Jonathan Taylor. I will take an RB2 and a wide receiver and maybe throw you a flyer wide receiver back. But basically, I'm sending you the best player. I'm going to get the second and third best player, and you'll get the fourth if you even want the fourth. But I understand that I'm in a position of not having power, and I need to fix things. And if I wait too long, now I'm going to get to the point where I'm 1-4, and I'm just going to take whatever deal can come my way so to get some help. But I want to get ahead of the ball on that one.
Yeah, I think that's one of those moves where, a manager, you lose assets, you gotta fill roster spots. You need to add some depth, when you're losing players. So I like that move. It makes a lot of sense. Hopefully something works out for you. A couple other guys on your roster I think are relevant. You got Njoku at tight end. Can you talk a little bit about Fannin, what you think of Fannin in that situation? And then talk about Alec Ayamanor. Obviously, big breakout week 2. Excited to have on a roster for most fantasy managers out there. Talk about those players.
Yeah, the Njoku situation, I would love to get out of, but I mean, at this point, it's the Fannin is what I referenced in week 1 of my waivers, or week 2 coming out of week 1, it's Isaiah Likely. Last year, we did the same thing. When you have 12 sets, 2 tight ends, it's very rare that we get one tight end, one top 10 tight end, let alone 2 inside the top 15. It just doesn't happen. And I go back and I referenced OJ Howard with Cameron Brate. And remember how that went? And it's because, especially, you can hope in some of these situations if you get somebody who's a clear blocker, Kincaid and Knox. But Knox still gets touchdowns here and there, and we see how frustrating Kincaid is. It's basically touchdown or bust. Fannin is definitely the floor play. If Njoku catches a touchdown, it's going to be cool. He's going to be top 10 for the week because it's tight end. But the Fannin situation is great for next year. 100% on board. It's just this year, it's going to be frustrating. But I will say for people chasing tight ends, please don't chase your tail. Like if you got Fannin, don't turn around and be like, well, he didn't have a good game, so I'm going to get Jatavian Sanders because he had a big one. Bryce Young just threw 55 times. So you're going to go get Sanders. Sanders is going to go out and get 2 for 17, and you're going to be like, well, maybe I should go back and pick up Theo Johnson because he had a big week. And you keep chasing the production. It's tight end. You're not... Honestly, unless you have a top 4-ish tight end, you're probably going to get 50% good weeks and 50% bad. So stop chasing. You just got to ride somebody through it. And I would just ride Juwan Johnson if he's still out there. On the flip side, yeah, Eddie Manor. I'm a fan of, let's also remember that he had a big game versus Travis Hunter, by the way. But that wasn't the only thing. I don't think he's better than Travis Hunter as a pure talent by any stretch of the imagination. But he only had to, I said this in the preseason, I was like, he only has to get past the corpse of Lockett and Mr. I only make 2 catches a year Van Jefferson. And he's already passed both of them. Similar to Franklin, he is the 2. And they had a tough sled, obviously, in week 1. Week 2 was a tougher match, or not tough, or tougher than what people might have expected. It was a tough 2 weeks. Broncos, Broncos is as tough as it gets, and then you get the Rams, which is also tough. It gets easier immediately this week and going forward against the Colts. If Cam Ward is going to keep throwing downfield and opening things up and starting to develop, hopefully we see some real good signs this week. We've seen flashes. Ayu Manor could be a wide receiver 4. That's all I'll give him, but he's somebody that nobody had anywhere. Nobody was stashing. He was one of my free guys, people that you could draft after the draft was over. So I actually think of all my lottery tickets on the outside of Quorum. Let's just say wide receivers on my bench. I have Ayu Manor, Kupp, Renfro, and Dobbs. Ayu Manor's got the highest ceiling.
I love it. No, it's good. I got him in a lot of places, so hopefully it works out. Obviously, it was cheap. It was easy to acquire him. So maybe not so much now. We'll see what happens. Now you got John Daigle week 3, tough matchup. He's got a loaded roster. For you moving forward, what players on your roster right now are going to need to step up and carry you to a title?
There's 2. Jake Browning needs to be the Jake Browning we've seen before. He used to be a top 10 quarterback. By the way, if you just take his points per game when he's been playing, he would be QB7 most years. Averages out to about QB7. I need that. And I need Justin Jefferson to be Justin Jefferson. I need him to be the Jetta we knew. And it's like whether Carson Wentz comes in and like capable. That's all we need. Just start targeting him. Just be Sam Darnold. Carson Wentz, just be Sam. Who would have thought they'd be wishing for the Vikings to have Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones back on this team at this point? Yeah. So if Jefferson can return first round value and Browning can even be a fringe QB1, I think I can get back into contention. Otherwise, I'm dead in the water, honestly. Like if those two, no Jefferson and Burrow, obviously, but those two positions not being what they were supposed to be, especially Jefferson, I'm fighting to not be that last place punishment team.
Well, you are fighting. I mean, you are obviously aggressive on the waiver wire. I'm sure you're gonna make something happen moving forward. Now, looking at the rest of the teams in the league, is there one team that you identify as the most loaded team?
Yeah. Because she hit on running backs that are just like really this kind of surprises. Kendall Valenzuela, who, by the way, I lost to in week 1. Hey, perfect example. I actually went to her for a trade. I was like, wow, you have some wide receivers here. Would you like, and like what was also, oh no, I was originally looking at running backs. I was like, she's got Hubbard and Javonte Williams starting. I guess Javonte Williams was great. Quinshon Judkins, I will say, not fair. She got him she was on the clock when the news broke that he was actually going to sign and play this year. So like, it just happens to slow drafts. But anyway, because of that, she has Harvey on the bench and then Judkins, but she also has Brian Robinson. And I was like, you know what? Patience on Harvey. Maybe I can buy low on that. Maybe if you don't want Judkins, whatever it might be. And I was like, hey, are you willing to trade a running back? Because I'm worried about DeAndre Swift. And then I looked and I was like, never mind. We don't match up because you got wide receivers out the wazoo. Puka Nacua, Drake London, T. Higgins, Quentin Johnston at your flex. And then you still, who's she still have on the bench? She has Reed, who's out, and then Shaheed. And I'm like, that's the perfect point. It's like, I could go to this team and be like, I want Harvey to try and buy low because I need to start taking shots. But what am I going to offer her? Like, I can't, even if I said, here, buy low on DK Metcalf straight up for a buy low on RJ Harvey, Metcalf's not even getting in her lineup right now. So, I think her, and especially Nick's, even being underperforming as her quarterback, her team freaking loaded. I'm glad I got her in week 1, but I still lost in week 1, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, Kendall, she's no slouch for sure. So when it comes to competing with some of these managers, is there one person in this league that you just have to beat?
Dave Richard. And that's only because I respect him more than anybody. He's been around like forever. He was one of the first people in the industry that actually made contact with Jamie Eisenberg and Dave Richard were like two of the first. Actually, a big part of it to shout out retired Dave Ganos, Hall of Famer FSWA. He was really the big proponent behind helping me get my career started. And then both of them over at CBS. Jamie actually helped me start the flex leagues. So that's, but yeah, Dave Richard, just because, I mean, we've already been talking, like I said, we texted and like messaged about making a trade before I picked up Brownie and just talking about all these type of things and looking at, we'll sit there and we've actually talked about other teams. So if I could get the win over Dave just to be like, haha, I got you. Plus I compete against him in the IDP league on CBS, my only IDP league. I don't know anything about IDP. Like I know the players, but like it's a whole other thing. Like, I don't know. Like after we get past about the top 20 IDP players, I'm kind of like, all right, who am I supposed to take? So if I can beat them in that one too, that's always fun.
Love it. Now, opportunity to trash talk anybody in the league. You want to take advantage of that, or are we good?
No, like John Daigle is like the worst. Like, dude, are you in high school with messaging? Like, I'll text him and then be like 3 days later messaging me back. And then like, we're like, hey, are you doing flex leagues this year? And then 5 days later, all right, count me in. Immediately respond. Cool. Blah, 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 whatever it was. And then nothing. Like, I feel like I'm trying to date the guy. Like, that's what it feels like he's ghosting me. Like, John Daigle, you are the worst communicator ever, but you are the most fun one of the most fun to hang out with in person. You got to get your butt back out to Flex Live because John Daigle is a great hang, but terrible communicator.
And your nemesis in week 3 for sure. You got to take him down.
I'm taking this on the chin. I already know I'm losing this one.
I love it. Well, it's fun. Obviously, it's great to talk about this league. I love how it kind of relates to every league a person's in. You're giving a lot of great information about these players. Everyone wants to know these breakdowns. So I love it. I love the opportunity to talk to you about this and share it with people out there listening. Can you share with listeners and viewers what you're doing with the Athletic and everything you're doing this season?
Yeah, over the Athletic, I got waivers that come out midnight Monday to 12:01 Tuesday. And then I have the rankings that come out on Tuesday at midnight, so 12:01 a.m. Wednesday. And so those two articles every single week. I've been posting my podcast, which I brought back from the dead, the old All In Sports podcast. It's now the All In Speed Run, which I'd love to get through 10 minutes on the recap shows, and then the quick long. It's a quick long version. It's a 30-minute long version, if you want to call it that, with guests during the middle of the week. So I have that going on as well, and I post that over the Athletic. But of course, the rankings, and then the fun rankings. I even asked you because I know you can answer this one. My rankings this week were my top 20 arcade games. What was yours? What was your favorite growing up? And I know you're a '90s kid like me.
Yeah, I mean, it's Tecmo Bowl for sure. You know, that was my game. But I also love Baseball Stars. Like Baseball Stars was special to me, just because it was one of the first games. Yeah, one of the first games with like stats, and that really got me going with keeping stats and everything.
Yeah, I used to do fantasy baseball. I don't enjoy that anymore. It's too long. We need to end it in July. Like All-Star break, over, done.
I love it. And obviously arcade, you know, there's Golden Tee. There's some good ones that I remember back in the day for sure. Love it. I love it. Well, again, thanks for coming on. For people that want to follow the Stacked League, go to stackedfantasy.com/Stacked League. Again, best of luck, Jake. Hopefully things work out. I know you're dealing with some stuff. I got some of those similar problems, so we can help each other here.
Yeah, well, we'll sleep in January, like everybody always says.
Right on.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.